The most horrifying stories start in the most ordinary places. Nothing feels off until it's far too late. If you enjoy strange, dark, and unsettling stories told in a cinematic style, you're in the right place. Viewer discretion is advised. This presentation is not intended to glorify violence, but to shed light on the social, psychological, and systemic factors surrounding this case. Now let's get into today's case. For days, a woman tried to reach her sister. No answer. Calls went unanswered. Messages left unread. It wasn't like her sister to be so quiet, so unreachable. She was the kind of person who would always pick up, always respond, no matter how busy or tired she was. That silence felt heavy, unnatural, and deeply troubling. The worry grew with each passing hour until finally, unable to ignore it any longer, the woman contacted the police and asked them to perform a welfare check. What officers uncovered inside was far more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. The police reached the property and found the main gate firmly closed. They called out, but no one responded. The compound was unnervingly silent. When entry was forced, they began their grim search. The crime scene wasn't random. There were no signs of forced entry, and the level of familiarity the killer had with the layout of the house hinted at something more personal. The wounds on the victim suggested rage, deep, targeted rage, and all of it pointed inward. At first glance, it looked like a robbery, but there were no valuables missing. To the officers on scene, something felt off. In homicides, there are certain red flags that seasoned investigators look for, and one of the biggest is overkill, when the amount of violence used far exceeds what's necessary to kill. It's not just about ending a life, it's about sending a message. And the crime scene was screaming it. The first body was discovered in the staff quarters, the longtime farmhand. His injuries were precise and lethal, taken completely by surprise. A merciless blow to the head, a stagger of stab wounds across the chest. He died without a fight. In the house inside the kitchen, the mother lay fallen. Her arms were broken, evidence she had tried to shield herself as the attack unfolded. Stab wounds pocked her chest and neck, and blunt force trauma told of the violence she endured in those impossible moments. A young boy was found in a nearby corridor, stab wounds across his chest and evidence of blunt impact to the head. Still, he fought back, though tragically, not successfully. In his bed, another young boy lay lifeless. His throat had been slit, multiple stab wounds marking his chest. An attack so precise it suggested the killer knew exactly where he would be. And the father, he was discovered sprawled near the balcony, his body marred by layers of deep lacerations. The sheer number of wounds, the pathologist later noted, spoke not just of intent, but of unfiltered rage. The chief pathologist's report would later tie it all together. Each wound was between 3 to 4 centimeters, eerily similar in size and severity. Multiple victims suffered slash marks to the neck, their blood vessels severed, killing blows delivered with intent and control. In every case, it was the same weapon, or nearly the same. What became clear from the autopsies wasn't just brutality, it was precision. There was no breaking in, no robbery, only a calculated, intimate carnage. One person could have done it, and as investigators would soon uncover, one person did. The bodies were identified, but to understand why this happened, you first need to know who they were. The patriarch, Nicholas Njoroge, a 58-year-old Kenyan nurse based in the United States, had returned home for the December holidays. For years, he worked abroad, providing for his family from afar. In Kenya, he was known as a quiet but respected figure. In the U.S., he was praised for his professionalism and steady hands in healthcare. But this trip home would be his last. His wife, Anne Wanjiku, a nurse at Wangige Sub-County Hospital, was deeply embedded in the local healthcare system. Described by colleagues as warm and nurturing, Anne had devoted her life to serving the sick in her community, balancing her demanding job with the responsibilities of raising a family. Christian was the youngest in the household, 13 years old, the son who still relied on his parents for everything. Maxwell, also 13, was his cousin. He had come to stay for the school holidays, and in that time, he had become part of the family's routine. And finally, James Kinyanjui, the family's longtime farmhand, was found in the servants' quarters. Known to neighbors as a humble, quiet man, James had served the household faithfully for years. The household should have had 4 children under its roof that evening, but not all of them were there. There were 2 daughters who escaped the carnage by a whisker. They were away at boarding school when the nightmare unfolded back home. As the officers surveyed the horrific scene, one crucial detail stood out. One family member was nowhere to be found. The eldest son was missing. The son, 22-year-old Lawrence, was a university student, but often kept to himself. Though he wasn't among the victims discovered at the house, his absence would become critical to the story's unraveling. Questions swirled. Was he a victim or the perpetrator? The police launched a search that would soon unravel dark secrets no one saw coming. At first, people assumed he was just another victim, but in tight-knit neighborhoods like this one, whispers travel fast. And soon, neighbors began to ask, why wasn't he found at the house? Why wasn't he mourning? Why had he changed so much so quickly? The son hadn't just gone missing. He had seemingly vanished without a trace. His phone was off, his social media silent. But detectives knew, people don't just disappear after a massacre like this. Not without a reason, and certainly not without a plan. When police traced Lawrence 2 days later to Lower Kabete, the missing puzzle piece slid into place, but not as anyone expected. He didn't deny the murders. He confessed, calmly, chillingly. He said he had planned the killings for weeks. Lawrence told detectives he felt isolated from family for years, misunderstood, dismissed, said his father was controlling, his mother overbearing, claimed even his younger brother challenged and disrespected him. He spoke of ridicule, feeling like an outsider in his own home. Lawrence told investigators he obsessively watched Killing Eve, a British psychological thriller centered on Villanelle, a calculated, charming assassin who murders without remorse. He said she became his blueprint. He studied how she stalked, killed, concealed evidence, then tried to emulate her methods. On the night of January 5th, just after 8 in the evening, a figure emerged from the shadows at the edge of Karura village. The evening was still, the kind of stillness that cloaks danger in silence. With no one watching, he scaled the perimeter wall of his family home and slipped inside through the back. The staff quarters were quiet. James, the loyal farmhand, had served the Warunge family for years. That night, he was first. A sudden blow to the back of the head took him down before he could react. His throat was then slit, quick and efficient. From there, the killer moved into the main house. Anne was in the kitchen, possibly preparing something for the next day or clearing up. She was attacked. Multiple stab wounds tore into her neck and chest. She fought. She screamed. But the house and the killer absorbed it. Panic rippled through the home. Her younger son, Christian, tried to hide. But the killer had seen him. Christian knelt at the door, crying, begging. He was stabbed repeatedly before his throat was slit. Maxwell was likely trying to hide or escape, but was ultimately caught in the bedroom. He suffered multiple stab wounds and blunt force trauma. His body was discovered lying near the bed, with signs of a violent struggle evident in the room. He died quickly, but not quietly. Then Nicholas, the father. Somehow he understood what was happening. He didn't wait. He made a desperate decision, leapt from the upper balcony, crashing to the ground. His leg broke on impact, leaving him crawling in pain across the dirt. But he was not fast enough. He was caught. The blade came down 34 times. Chest, back, head. Not just murder, slaughter, execution to end life and legacy. When it was over, the killer didn't rush. He changed clothes, cleaned himself, vanished into the night. Outside, the village remained asleep. No one heard a thing. No alarms, no cries. Lawrence hopped on a motorcycle, boda, heading toward Wangiji, where he caught a matatu, public minibus, bound for Mai Mahiu, clutching the kitchen knife, his weapon, and other items from the crime scene. Under the cover of night, he reached Mai Mahiu. There in an open field, he set blaze to some of the evidence, burning what he could in a desperate bid to erase his trail. After the fire, he walked further into the quiet edges of Mai Mahiu. There he found an old pit latrine, forgotten, overgrown, and deep. One by one, he dropped the rest inside: the knife, his shoes, what was left of his clothes, and a single piece of paper. He didn't hesitate. He didn't look back. Then just like that, he left. After he had confessed, Lawrence didn't hesitate. Calm and composed, he offered to show the detectives exactly where he had hidden the evidence. They followed him to Mai Mahiu. There, behind an old structure, he pointed to a latrine, deep, abandoned, and forgotten. Inside, nearly 20 feet down, he said they would find the knife, the clothes, the shoes he wore that night, and a single piece of paper. To reach them, police had to break open the wall of the latrine and lower ropes into the pit. One by one, the items were retrieved, just as he had described. Nothing more, nothing less. After the recovery of the evidence, detectives began retracing Lawrence's final movements before his arrest. Surveillance had placed him in Mai Mahiu, but it was not just a hideout. It was a stopover with purpose. It was later confirmed that Lawrence had gone there to meet someone. His girlfriend, Sarah Mathoni, a soft-spoken young woman living with her family in the quiet town. In recorded interrogations, she admitted that she helped him after the killings, burning the bloodied clothes and other incriminating items in a concealed spot behind a house in the rural outskirts. She had known what he had done, and still, she chose to protect him. The two were arraigned in a Nairobi court in early January of 2021. The courtroom atmosphere was tense. Lawrence stood emotionless, his face blank and his posture stiff as the charges were read. He faced 5 counts of murder, including that of his own parents and siblings. The prosecution painted a picture of calculated horror and a family wiped out by the very person meant to be one of them. Beside him stood his girlfriend, quiet and visibly shaken. But unlike Lawrence, she wasn't facing charges of murder. Her case was different. The prosecution reviewed her role in the case, accessory after the fact, with possible obstruction of justice. But as the investigation progressed, her charges were dropped. Authorities stated that there wasn't enough evidence to prosecute her beyond her partial involvement in the disposal of evidence. The judge ordered her unconditional release, and she quietly walked out of the court. Lawrence, on the other hand, was remanded for psychiatric evaluation at Mathari Mental Hospital. His journey through the justice system was only beginning. The court would later hear detailed accounts of how he committed each murder, how he fled, and how he confessed. But even as his name made headlines across the country, his trial was slow, complicated by mental health assessments and repeated adjournments. To this day, the memory of that courtroom remains stark. A young man accused of annihilating his bloodline, and a young woman who, whether out of fear or loyalty, tried to make it all disappear in flames. Yet even in her silence, the same haunting question echoed. How much did she know? And when did she realize who he really was? As we conclude the story, we pause to remember Nicholas, Anne, Christian, Maxwell, and James. Lives that were full of promise ended by unthinkable violence. May their memory live on, and may they find peace. But now I turn it to you. Do you believe mental health played a role in this tragedy? Could it have been prevented, or was something even darker beneath the surface? Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you found this video thought-provoking, don't forget to like it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next case. And if there's a story you think deserves to be told, especially one that's been buried or forgotten, drop it in the comments. We just might cover it next. Stay safe, take care. I'll see you in the next video. Peace.